Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight BM Boldt is back. We are talking Frank Zappa, and we are talking 200 Motels. So let's get started.
Talking bands no one talks about. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and we are back. It's been it's been a couple weeks because I was on the 80s cruise, and now I'm back in the warehouse, so to speak. And today we've got BM Boldt back, and we are doing yet another episode in our Frank Zappa series. Now we have arrived in 1971, and we are going to tackle the soundtrack to 200 Motels. So I want to start out by saying, I have a lot of Zappa. Well, I don't have everything. I'm not like BM Boldt who has everything. I have certain stuff. I love that whole Mother's period. We know that. That's brilliant. And I always look at some of this newer stuff, even though we're in 1971. We all know Uncle Meat was brilliant. That was basically the original band to some degree. This really isn't. This is a soundtrack to a movie. And I want to be all warm and fuzzy about it, but it's hard for me to be warm and fuzzy about it because, well, we're going to talk about it. So anyway, Byron, how are you? Nice to see you. Welcome to the show. Have you been okay while I've been gone? You've been all right? Okay.
I've been depressed. I didn't have anything going on. So
right.
Now that you're back, I got a life again.
Well, anyway, I'm glad. It warms my heart. So anyway, 200 Motels, 1971. This is the soundtrack. Based on what I know and some of my research, this is one of those records that's love-hate. Some people love this record. Some people despise this record. I'm not going to tell you where I'm at exactly, and I'm not exactly sure where Byron's going to come in, but this is one of those records. This came out of United Artists back in 71, and it went out of print. And it was out of print for years. And there's an original pressing, and those were pretty expensive back in the day. What year was it when Ryko ended up putting it back out? Do you know? Was it in?
I think it was in the mid to late 90s.
Into the late 90s. So it'd been out of print ever since it virtually came out. But anyway, you're showing some stuff. Show us what you got there. Show us some of that vinyl there.
This is the booklet that came in it, and you see some of the cast on the stage. Let's see here. I don't want to show those boobs, but oops, I should have booed.
Was there boobs? Oh, yeah, you can show that. That's
Lucy from the GTOs.
Yeah, I saw Pamela in there.
That's Ainsley Dunbar, I think, and some of the stage. And, let's see here.
I mean, the booklet's great.
Yeah, it's a nice package. There's a big poster, movies,
And there's, what's his name? I was asking you about that because I had not seen the movie, ladies and gentlemen. So Byron said, well, before we talk about the record, watch the movie. So I watched the movie. It was painful, but I watched the movie. Now go back to the booklet. What's his name that you said was Ringo's chauffeur is playing bass in one of those pictures?
There. The
yeah.
It's Martin Licker.
Ringo's chauffeur?
He was Ringo's chauffeur. Getting a little ahead of ourselves, but Jeff Simmons had quit in pre-production for the movie, and they were going to have Wilford Brimley. Is that the name? He was in Hard Day's Night or something?
Oh, the guy, Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley has diabetes.
Is that the guy's name I'm thinking of? The guy?
You're thinking about the guy in Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, what was his name? Anyway, he was going to do it.
But he's very clean.
He backed out at the last minute as well. So then Martin Licker walked in. And he had the look, and he actually played a little bit of bass. And they said, "You got the job." So
he was good in the movie.
So he took Jeff's job in the movie, in the band. But anyway, we're kind of getting at it.
But I thought he was good in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a fine job. And he probably had one of the biggest parts in the movie as far as the band members are concerned. But there's an there's a documentary on the making of 200 Motels, and I believe Jeff Simmons is in there, and he was like, "Yeah, I had the best part, but I freaked out or something, and thought I should get out of the band, and he regretted it." But he came back and was on the Roxy and Elsewhere album.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
yeah,
liked him. I thought he was
Frank
great.
worked it out. So
But, I don't think that the movie, and I know Frank, from what I've read, was very disappointed in the movie. He basically thought it was a mess. It's probably not the vision he had for it. But it is what it is. Um, but yeah, I didn't care for the movie at all. I just, you get to a certain point in life, and if something doesn't take you right away, it's not like when you're 20, you can spend a lot of time listening to something or watching something and go, yeah, this is all right. But you get to a certain age, you look at things and go, well, this isn't doing anything for me. It's like, I don't really want to waste my time on it. Maybe if I was on acid and sitting in a midnight movie watching 200 Motels, that might be the proper environment. Or you're out drinking with your buddies when you're 19 and you're watching 200 Motels in the midnight movie. But just for me to sit and watch it on Amazon, I didn't think it was all that great. But there were certain parts about it. And I love Ringo Starr. I think Ringo was great. He's always good. And yeah, the chauffeur was great. And Jimmy Carl Black, absolutely brilliant. Because he's the Indian of the group and he's always good. But I thought Jimmy Carl Black was awesome. But it was fun for what it is. But I mean, it doesn't age well. It's nice to see all these artists and Ainsley Dunbar playing and George Duke in the movie. It's all fun to see them. But, I could edit that film down to maybe 10 minutes and I'd be good with it.
yeah,
But that's neither here or there. We're not here to talk about the film. We can tie it in. You may want to talk about it, but we're here to talk about the record that was released, the 2-record set. And I'm going to throw it over to you, BM Bolt, and get your thoughts on it. And we can just talk back and forth. We want to keep it loose here in the warehouse because I am rusty because I have not been in the warehouse for a while. So what's your thoughts? Give me something.
I'll talk a little bit about the movie then.
Okay.
So this was actually filmed prior to the Fillmore shows, but it ended up coming out after that. So what I think really went down was when they were making this movie. Apparently, they only filmed about a third of the script, and then they had 7 days to do this. They ran out of time. They ran out of money.
It looks like it.
Yeah, it was definitely a low budget film just based on the sets they used.
It wasn't even a film, Byron.
It was videotape.
Shot on videotape.
Right. It was the first movie ever made on videotape, allegedly. And they transferred it to film after that. Apparently the studio, in order to save money, erased all the videotape after the fact.
Probably reused it.
And reused it. And they lost all the original footage. Which Frank wasn't happy about. But so what happens was, since they didn't film all of the script, it's not really a finished movie. It's basically a movie about, it's like a surrealistic film about life on the road for a band, and it's about them picking up chicks and how they always want to quit the band, but Frank's always spying on them and hearing what they're saying. And a lot of the dialogue in the movie is things that allegedly Frank heard them say. So they're all playing versions of the band members are all playing versions of themselves, but through Frank's eyes. And what I ended up thinking happened was he released the Fillmore album because there were things that he wanted in the movie that they didn't get to shoot. And a lot of that material that they didn't get to shoot is stuff that they put on the Fillmore album, is the way I see it. The whole, where they're talking about being in the how the girl's car and all that stuff. So I think the Fillmore album was to fill in some of the gaps that they didn't have time to make in the movie. And there's a documentary called The True Story of 200 Motels which will kind of explain a lot about the movie and
Mhm.
how they didn't have time or the money to finish it. So the plot of there really isn't a good plot because I think so
No.
much is missing. It's really just a bunch of scenes that some are kind of related and others aren't. A lot of them are kind of like fantasy things, which have nothing to do with the plot. So it's all over the place. It's not a good movie, but it is an interesting movie, I think, as a Zappa.
Well, I want to say that when I watched the movie, it reminded me of the Monkees movie Head, which has a lot of different vignettes. Nothing really none of the vignettes tie in with each other. But the things with the Monkees movie Head, it was beautifully shot. It was beautifully written. All the vignettes are great. Um, it's like 200 Motels is the opposite of the Monkees movie Head, which Monkees movie Head is absolutely a brilliant film as a film. Um, 200 Motels seems to be on the same line with the different vignettes and stuff, but it just doesn't seem fully realized. Or maybe it's because they ran out of money. Don't forget the Monkees, when they made the Monkees movie Head, they still had Monkees money, you know? And Zappa, you know how he worked. He'd put a record out, recoup enough money to make another record, recoup enough money to make another record. And, things probably ran out of money. He wanted to do a film or a video or whatever you want to call it. Video transferred to film, and, he just ran out of money. I get it. But it's just not, you know, Zappa, I'm used to all these works being fully realized, like absolutely free. We're only in it for the money. Uncle Meat, Hot Rats, for God's sakes. Hell, I'm going to even put Ruben and the Jets in there. Those all seem fully realized. This, I know it's a soundtrack, but it doesn't seem fully realized, either the film or the soundtrack recording, to me. But we're going to get into it. I'm probably
Yeah,
a tangent, but
no, that's fine. The uh, the other thing is, I think there was supposed to be a scene that they filmed of that turned that they tried to film it, but it didn't work out at all, and they went with the cartoon, I think, instead, is because there's this cartoon in the middle of the
yeah, the
movie,
cartoon's okay.
and the cartoon is pretty good, and it is essentially about Jeff Simmons quitting the band. And it's kind of a fantasy thing too, because it's about Jeff and this elixir that he takes, and he starts tripping out, and then he's got his good and his bad conscience talking to him about quitting the band, and then he's like stealing stuff from the hotel room, and it's all set to music, and I actually think that's pretty good. But I'll talk about the music later. We got Ringo in here, and he plays Larry the Dwarf, who isn't really a dwarf, but he's dressed as Zappa during the whole movie. He wears the same outfit that Frank wears, so he's kind of portraying Frank. You got Theodore Bickel, who plays this Rance Muhammad, who's the narrator, and I think he might also be the devil. He kind of leads you to believe that.
Hmm.
Keith Moon, who's dressed up as a nun, who's majorly depressed about men for some reason. You got basically the whole band at the time is in here, and you got Don Preston makes a cameo, and he's playing, I believe, the character Uncle Meat from the unreleased Uncle Meat movie. Jimmy Carl Black's playing Cowboy Burt. Motorhead,
Right. Absolutely
yeah,
stunning.
Motorhead's playing a newt rancher. You've got Miss Lucy and Janet. I don't know if she was in the GTOs or not. Her last name
I don't know.
escapes me at the moment.
Pamela's in it. I saw her.
Yeah, she doesn't really do have a speaking part, but yeah, she is in there. So that's, I guess, all I need to talk about is the movie. As far as we can move on to the music if you want now.
No, well, it all ties in. So yeah, we can talk about that. What's your thoughts on the whole soundtrack? Because I mean, it picks up. It's like just a continuation of what was in the movie. Um, I don't know. You talk first, and then
Yeah,
I'll come in.
I'll mention a couple other things real quick. So a couple of years ago, they released a 6 CD set of this for the
Mhm.
50th anniversary. I don't think I've heard that.
I did
Be
not
a
hear.
lot. It would be a lot to sit through. I don't. The album itself is enough to sit through, but there's also go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're right. It was a lot for me to sit through.
They also released something called 200 Motels, the Suites. The Los Angeles Philharmonic recorded that in 2013. Okay, so I'll talk about this as we get into the album as well. There's a lot of the orchestrated music that did not make the movie or the album because of the constraints.
Mm-hmm.
This 200 Motels, the Suites, is all the classical music, my understanding, recorded and performed, were only where parts of this was missing from the album and the movie. So they're doing the full orchestration that Frank had written for this. I don't think I've heard that either. I wouldn't mind checking that out. I did see there's somebody recorded a show. They did it in Paris. They performed it with actors and everything too. And I watched some of that. I might have to go back and rewatch that again. But I digress. Let me talk a little bit about the music without going into the album. So what you really have here is you have some rock music, the mother's playing, a little bit of country, some jazz,
Mm-hmm.
a ton of orchestral music with the I think it was the Royal Philharmonic, and a full choir. It's a little bit of opera at times too, because you've got this soprano vocalist who does some solos throughout the album, and there's some male opera guys singing as well. I don't know if they're tenors or whatever, but so, and you also get various combinations of all of that. Sometimes the band and the orchestra are playing together. Sometimes it's just the orchestra. Sometimes it's just the band. You know, you get this choir singing here and there. The orchestral music is at times very melodic. At times it's very avant-garde 20th century, a la Vares Stravinsky. You know, so if you're familiar with Frank's classical composition style, you'll know what I'm talking about here. The album does not follow the sequence of the movie. It's rearranged. There's stuff in the movie that's not on the album, and there's stuff on the album that's not in the movie. Or did I say that right? Or I don't know, vice versa. So it's an interesting movie. It's not a good movie. It's an interesting album. It's not a great album, but go ahead, and then we can talk about some of the tracks now.
No,
Whatever you got to add.
now I want to go back to rephrase. I had not heard 200 Motels until we were going to do this show. Got a lot of Zappa. I don't have anything. I did not have this, so this was like I'm coming into it fresh, which I like to do, to be very honest, because I don't have any preconceived notions or anything burned into my head that it's not like I heard it when I was 14 and it changed my life or anything. I'm coming in later. So the first thing that I notice on the record is how terribly recorded it is. The orchestral sections don't sound very good. The band sections don't sound very good. It sounds like, yeah, you look at it in the film and go, okay, that's the way it sounds. But if you listen to the soundtrack, you would assume that things would sound better on here. But it doesn't sound very good.
I'm almost certain that it's at least the orchestral stuff, and I think most of the band stuff was recorded live while they were filming. So it wasn't a case of where they were acting like they were performing and they were really recording it in a better location. It was recorded live on the sets.
It sounds like okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's say you were recording a band and you placed maybe 3 microphones out. Here's the band playing and you put 3 microphones out. It sounds like a damn bootleg is what it really sounds like. So that kind of drove me crazy, but some people like that. Some people don't. I'm on that whole side where it just drives me nuts. So I don't like that for one. But the material, I think, like you, I don't know how you look at this record though, because we haven't really talked about it. You may think great record. I don't know. Based on my reviews and what I've seen, a lot of people think that this record's a disaster. There's no middle ground. People either think this thing's brilliant or this thing's trash. I don't think it's brilliant, but I don't think it's trash. I don't think anything that Frank Zappa did is really ever bad. I don't think it's one of the stronger things. I didn't care for the Fillmore album at all.
I was gonna say you didn't care for that.
I didn't care for this either. Now, the only thing that I can contribute that to is Flo and Eddie. There's a lot of Flo and Eddie in here. Now, I want to go on record to say that, yes, I love the Turtles, but they were in a band situation much more. They weren't doing shtick in the Turtles. They're doing shtick here pretty much. And I don't know. Maybe I just don't get their humor. Uh, I don't know. I just, I, it just really didn't do much for me. The lyrics are kind of silly. I mean, you might find humor in it, but it's very childish, a lot of penis talk, a lot of guttural type of things. I mean, it's fine, but it's a lot more like what came later in Frank's career. See, with the Mothers, you didn't really have any of that stuff. You could have humor, but it was smart. This is kind of childish, and I don't know. How do I want to put it? Um, it's just silly. Okay. Let's just leave it at that. Um, as far as the orchestral stuff for me, I practically fell asleep in it. And I know it's a soundtrack. I get it. Would this record have been better if we eliminated the soundtrack material and just kept the individual quote unquote rock tracks, so to speak? Probably. Um, there are certain tracks on here that I took out that I think are pretty good. I think one of the best tracks on here is Lonesome Cowboy Burt. I think, like I said, Jimmy Carl Black, absolutely perfect in the film, perfect on here. It's very funny, unless you're a redneck, then you probably would be offended. Um, half a dozen provocative squats. I mean, it's kind of childish. Talks about shooting deodorant in areas. I mean, come on. But I mean, it's okay. It's just silly though. Um,
Movie is
Go ahead.
it's not Frank is trying to provoke, I think, and do something that just is just out there. He's having an orchestra do stuff that they probably had never done before. And I'll talk a little bit about the choir singing
maybe
things.
that orchestra, but think about the Beatles and Abbey. But think about the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper. The Beatles had the orchestra do the most bizarre things on the planet. Brian Wilson, when was Smile, had stuff going on. We're talking 1971. A lot of that stuff's been done, but this stuff isn't as radical as what Brian Wilson was doing or what the Beatles were doing with orchestras. This is a lot more down to earth.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Anyway,
Go ahead.
let me go over some of the tracks
Okay.
and talk a little bit about the music. I'll start with the first side here. And the first track is a semi-fraudulent direct from Hollywood Overture. Very lovely, melodic, classical track, orchestral, actually, he's borrowing the melody from Holiday in Berlin on that.
And I must say, when you hear that in the film, it stands out.
Yes, it does.
It stands out in the film. And then when he opens with it on this, it also stands out. And I think that's probably one of the highlights on the record.
Right, because there's not a lot of orchestrated stuff on here that's melodic.
And this is.
Right.
That's great. Okay.
The next track, Mystery Roach, is a good rocking track with the band playing. Shorter, but I think it's pretty darn good. The next thing is this dance of the rock and roll interviewers, which, okay, this was supposed to be an 11-minute suite. But because of the constraints, it's only about a minute on there. So, if you listen to that 200 Motels, the suite, you'd hear the full 11 minute. Tracks 4 through 8 of the Sealed Tuna Sandwich suite.
What's your thoughts on that?
Huh?
You like it, okay?
It's all right. It's a bunch of short classical pieces, and Flo and Eddie are singing about the town that they're in, which is called Centerville in the movie. It's just some
I
generic.
think that's memorable,
And
but
that track later became Bogus Pomp. I don't know if you're familiar with that title. I believe that was on the I think the London Symphony. It might have been like on Orchestral Favorites as well.
when they're doing the whole Centerville part in the film, that's very memorable, I think.
It's
I
decent.
mean, it's decent,
Yeah.
but the thing is, when you listen to this record, is this one of those records, though, you listen to it and you get to this point, you get to the Tuna Fish Promenade, Mystery Roach, and you're analyzing, is this top shelf Zappa that you want to re-listen to again? That's the real question. Like, I can listen to We're Only in It for the Money, absolutely free, all that era over and over again, and I'll never get tired of it because there are hooks. That's great songwriting, great production, great everything. Everything's perfect. This just seems to be by this stage, and we've kind of talked about it. It just doesn't seem. This just seems like a transitional period for Frank, and it
Yeah, it
just
kind of
doesn't.
was.
And it just does. A lot of this stuff just doesn't seem all fleshed out to me. Maybe it does to you, but it just doesn't to me. I don't think I would ever really return to this record because I don't think there wasn't really anything on here that really captured, other than Lonesome Cowboy Burt,
Which is the
which I
next
think,
track.
which is phenomenal. I think that's the highlight of the whole record.
But
Anyway, go ahead. I'm on
you
a
know,
tangent.
I basically get around to each Zap album about every 5 years at this point in my life.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh man, I got to put on this. Yeah, I just kind of rotate my way through it, and it takes a few years to get through everything. But no, so Lonesome Cowboy Burt, yeah, that's a country song with Jimmy Carl Black. It's great. It's about a redneck cowboy getting drunk, beating up commies, and trying to hook up with the waitress. So
Ain't that America for you and
yeah,
me?
right.
Little pink houses for you and me.
Let's into the first side. Let's see the second side. It's not a lot to really talk about there. It's a lot of orchestral stuff.
Just loses me.
A little bit of Flo and Eddie singing along to it. Would You Like a Snack has a little bit more of Holiday in Berlin. With this time, it's with the rock group and the orchestra playing. The last 6 songs on the first side, though, is the suite for the She Painted Up Her Face, half a dozen provocative squats.
And that's not too bad.
It's not too bad, yeah. It alternates between the rock group and the orchestra playing. The She Painted Up Her Face medley repeats in 3 of those 6 tracks. She painted up her face. They keep kind of going back to that. And yeah, I wrote down it's about some groupies are getting ready to go out for the night and see a band, and it's a little vulgar at times. Yeah, it is.
It is vulgar. This is a vulgar
But
record.
that kind of goes back to the Fillmore show, because that album was all about the groupies, and this is them getting ready to go out for the night. So it kind of ties back to that album in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, the stuff in the Fillmore he kind of wanted to have in the movie as well, but he just didn't work out.
Right.
So we're on to side 3 now. That starts out. This is the cartoon part of the movie, and it's 3 tracks. I'm Stealing the Towels, Dental Hygiene Dilemma, and Does This Kind of Life Look Interesting? And it's basically very atonal orchestra music at times. And like I said, it's the story of Jeff hallucinating with his good and bad conscience about quitting the band. And what they did in this is they pitch shifted all the vocals, a lot like in Gregory Peccary. Now, I don't know if anybody.
Well, they pitch shifted a lot of stuff on We're Only in It for the Money, too.
It's that kind of a thing, though.
Yeah.
They pitched made the voices higher sounding, and they're telling this story. Grand Funk gets mentioned. So does Studebaker, Hawk, and Billy the Mountain, which will be in the next album. So kind of preparing us for that, I guess. And I also thought that this kind of life section, it reminds me of when the Tubes do What Do You Want from Life?
Mm-hmm.
Does
Well,
this
they
kind
could
of
influence by it.
Yeah. So, does this look interesting to you? Does that, what do you want from life? Kind of. So, it reminded me of that. The next track, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I think this might be the best song on the album.
Got a great choral arrangement. Jim Pond sounds good.
It's a nice soul pop track.
I'd say it's the highlight
really
of
good.
that side.
That's a really good song.
Yeah.
Really good. Next track's Penis Dimension.
There we go with the penis.
So it's mostly orchestral with Flo and Eddie singing along with the choir, and they're talking about people that are subconscious about the sizes of their penis and breasts. So it's all right.
Yeah.
Side 3 ends with "What will this evening bring me this morning?" Apparently, I think in the movie there's also a "What will this morning bring me this evening?" And they're very similar. Starts out more like a waltz, and then it kind of picks up. But I think the ending of it's pretty catchy. What will this morning bring me this evening, or however that goes.
What will I say the next day?
Hey, to whatever I bring to my hotel.
I dragged to my hotel tonight.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here about the hotel, bringing the girl back. Except that goes back to the Fillmore thing again, We're staying at the Holiday Inn or wherever the hell they were staying. So then now we're up to side 4. Side 4 is mostly orchestration. I want to talk a little bit about it though, because like the very first song on here, a nun suit painted on some boxes. It's interesting because it's orchestrated, and you have the soprano female singer singing. So it's like an opera in some ways. And here's what I was saying earlier about they're doing things that they haven't probably done before. Here are some of the words that this female has to sing in her really high voice. You certainly look suave and get me hot. Hot, hot, get me hot and horny. If there's one thing I really get off on, it's a nun suit painted on some old boxes. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever, but she's probably thinking, what the hell am I saying? And it's kind of funny to hear it when you're hearing her hitting these really high notes.
Yeah.
So, okay, that leads us to Magic Fingers. This song rocks.
Great. That's a great rocking song. Really,
some great guitar riffs in it. It's basically a song about putting quarters into a vibrating bed at the motel.
We all need a song about that.
Yeah. So, and the ending is kind of funny because it's like this surrealistic epilogue by, I think it's Mark, and he's talking about his sexual fantasies that he has in the hotel room. And he says, well, I beat you with some tennis shoes I got from Jeff Beck.
Yeah, that did stick out. Anytime you talk about Jeff Beck, for God's sakes, I'm in.
Zappa, as Brett mentioned, Beck, he mentioned him in Punky's Whips, right? You're more fluid than Jeff Beck. He's probably mentioned him before in other albums too. But
I'm sure, probably.
Most of the rest of the side is just, once again, just short orchestrated pieces.
What's your thoughts on Strictly Genteel?
Well, let me get to that. I got one more I want to talk about.
Okay.
One more. Little Green Scratchy Sweaters. Once again, it's a orchestrated piece with the female soprano singer, and she's singing, "Broth reminds me of nuns. I see them smashing kids with rulers, disciplining munchkin cretins, tortured munchkins, Irish Catholic victims, little green scratchy sweaters. Munchkins get me hot." What the hell is it?
I have no idea.
But the way she's got to sing it, it just cracks me up. So anyway.
Yeah, but for repeated listenings, you want to just dive back in? Or are you good for another
every
10
5
years?
years? Every 5 years or so, I'll listen to it.
Okay. Well, what about Gentile? I thought that was a pretty beautiful track.
Yeah, to me, that's like the bookend to the opening track. Very nice, melodic, orchestrated piece. The band, I think, plays a little bit on it too. So Strictly Gentile's been on 5 albums. Studio 10, London Symphony Orchestra. You can't do that on Stage 6. Make a Jazz Noise here. And then this one. Maybe more. Those are the 5.
God knows it probably has been recycled.
Yes. So yeah, this is the finale. Theodore Bickel, who is the narrator, he starts saying, okay, this is the end of the movie, and he starts talking and whatnot, and the orchestra comes in and he starts singing the words, and Flo and Eddie join in along with the chorus. But then, um, after a couple more verses, it kind of changes into like a church revival thing with Howard singing, and it really picks up the pace there, and I really like that way that ends. So yeah, I don't know how you thought about that.
Uh, I thought it was fine, but by the time I got to the end of the album, I was exhausted.
Good
Um,
or bad, exhausted.
Bad exhausted because I think the record there's good stuff on it, but you have to whittle it. It needs edited. And I know it's a soundtrack. Soundtracks, I don't expect much from soundtracks. You know, you've got all that incidental music, all the orchestral stuff. A lot of people just like to go right through it. I totally get it. But I think if you whittle the record down, you probably get about, let's say we take everything, whittle it down to all the tracks that you mentioned. What, you probably get about half one record, half an album,
Yeah, I mean, if you
50
started
minutes
with
maybe,
if you started with the
45 minutes.
if you started with the intro, the opening track and the
Mhm.
ending track, and then threw in all the rock stuff and maybe a couple of the other interesting things, yeah, you get about an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it needs edited. I don't like the way the orchestral pieces were recorded. Some of the, and like you said, they probably just put up some microphones. It just sounds like a bootleg. It drives me crazy. So that for one means I can't really listen to it. I mean, it's fine, but I don't know. I just don't think that this version of the Mothers is as great as what came before. And like I
Yeah,
said, it's a transitional period, you know?
I
Uh,
think the best thing that happened to Frank for you, as far as Frank, is he got thrown off the stage a few months later, and he broke up this version of the band.
that's probably, yeah, yeah. Hey, I like Kingsley Dunbar. I like George Duke. Don't get me wrong. I just think, I think he just relies too much on Flo and Eddie. I don't know why it drives me crazy, but it does. And it shouldn't based on
I
what
like him.
I just don't like it. And I thought I had high hopes for this stuff. And it just doesn't do it for me. I feel bad. I want to like it, but I don't like it. It's not horrible. There's nothing that Frank has produced that's horrible, but I would probably rate it three. I'd probably give it 3 stars, like Fillmore.
All right.
It just doesn't seem like it's just half baked. And it could be the time. It could be everything was going on. We run out of money. We're scrambling to get the record together. There's a lot. There's probably a lot behind the scenes. I probably need to watch the documentary to get more of that, to maybe understand it better. But without watching the documentary or knowing much about it, this is just the way it sounds to me. It needs edited, re-recorded, really something in the studio that sounds decent, like all of his material does. This just sounds subpar. It sounds like demos almost. And I just don't care for it. That's all. I the way it sounds, I just really don't have any interest in revisiting it. I don't know. It's great for Jimmy Carl Black. He
That's
steals
just one
the
song.
album. Um,
You like some of the other stuff.
Here's I think's okay. Mystery Roach is all right. Uh,
Daddy, 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 and
I think it's
Magic
disappointing.
Fingers were great. Yeah,
I
like you
just
said.
think it's a disappointing record. If you're counting this as an album, and I can see why it went out of print so fast. And it just basically you didn't see it until Riker reissued it. It's just not, man, it's just not that great.
All right, well,
I'd probably give it 3 stars.
you give it 3. That's fine. I got your scores written down here, so keeping track.
Well, I know. At least someone's keeping track.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
going to.
what give me your synopsis.
I'm struggling with the score on this myself.
Why? You go back with this record a long
I
time.
go. Yeah, I first started listening to this in the late '80s, so 35 years at least.
I'm just trying to be, when I'm looking at this, I'm trying to be open-minded and not have any predetermined judgment. Yeah, it's hard for me to look at this record and look at the greatness that came before. It just doesn't, it's just not up to that level. It's not up to the level of Cruising with Ruben and the Jets. It's just not there. You know, was it because this is real, 1971 and it's a transition? Maybe, but anyway, go let you talk.
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, the rock stuff is really good on here. A lot of the orchestrated stuff, though, it's like you say, it's like soundtrack stuff, and it's just not that great to
Good.
listen
It's
to.
not that good.
But if you're sitting there watching the movie while that's going on, it's all right because it's just background, you know.
When you bring it to the forefront like this,
Yeah.
there's a lot that, okay, that totally makes sense. It's okay in the background. You put it in the foreground where you have all your attention to it, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, exactly. So
Perfect.
if you could watch the movie while you're listening to that, it's more enjoyable. But yeah, when you're just listening to this and you're going through, like, most of side four is just orchestrated.
It's like torture.
Great. Right. But there are a couple things on side four where it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. I'm going to go 6.5.
Okay. I'm going to go 3. Now, I want to say I wanted to like this record and I wanted to like the Flo and Eddie stuff, but I'm just not. Chunga was okay, but if you compare that to what came before, it's still not quite up to that standard, but it's okay. We all can't like everything. And if I'm totally talking out my ass, I want anybody in the comments to tell me what I'm missing, because I'm missing something evidently. Because, BM Bolt here is giving it a 6.5.
Yes.
6.5. I'm obviously missing something. Byron, what am I missing? What is it that I'm missing? What greatness am I missing?
You're not a hardcore Zappa guy like me. You're hard.
Poor good Zappa guy.
You're You're almost hardcore Zappa. You're not quite there. You're close.
Yeah. We're still early in this series, though. You cannot. The brilliance absolutely free, and we're only in the only in it for the money. Those levels are awfully hard to achieve, and we can't always achieve those levels.
Things are going to get better in a couple albums.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think this is a transitional period.
We got to get through Just Another Band from LA, and then things start to get better again. But I'm not going to say what I think of that album. We'll save that for.
No, we'll save it. But 6.5, I mean, all right. But you don't mind all the penis jokes and all the stupidness that's on it. You don't mind that stuff? I just think it's kind of old,
I actually think it's, if it's the guys in the band saying it, it's not as funny. But if it's like a female opera singer saying things about
I get that,
getting horny, it's like, well, this is kind of funny because something you would never expect to hear. But yeah, I mean, the penis jokes are okay.
I don't know. It just seems like Frank got to be real childish very quickly. It just seems, I don't know. Do you find that?
I think he figured he could make money by going that route.
Maybe so.
Frank was all about Frank, and I think in his mind he thought he was the classical composer, but he knew he couldn't make money doing that. So he's like, well, if I'm going to write classical scores and not make any money, I need to make money writing other stuff. And he would write whatever he could, I think, to make the money to afford to do the classical stuff.
I think you're probably right.
I think he started out thinking that way, but I think he started to think that way
later. Maybe, right here.
But I like it all. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I just don't like this era.
I enjoy it.
Okay. I want to like it. I just don't like it. I have to
I
be
like all of
honest. I have to be honest. I cannot not be honest. This was a chore for me to get through. It was a chore. And normally it's
It's
not.
a chore. I understand that. It is a little bit of a chore.
Okay.
Um,
So I can hardly wait till we get out of this era into something
we
else.
got one more of this era. So
All right. So we got a 3 and a 6.5.
yes,
And I didn't tally that. So that's what, a 4.25,
4.75.
4.75? I don't know. I like to hear from people in the comments to see what they say. Again, don't burn my house down and don't burn across my yard. But I have to be honest, I just don't get it.
This is the lowest scoring album average so far we've had.
Is it? Yeah,
Fillmore we averaged a 5. So yeah.
Mhm. But it's just a soundtrack. Is it a serious record? Is it a serious record? It's just a soundtrack. I mean, couldn't he have just made a 200 Motels album and not be a soundtrack? I'm just saying. I mean,
Like I
do we
said,
take soundtracks as being that serious? Especially in
you should do.
1971.
You should rip this to your computer, create a playlist of just rip the songs you like and just
Mhm.
listen to that.
Yeah, just listen to Jimmy Carr Black.
There's other good stuff on here.
I know. All right. I think we covered it. There you go. What did you say was 4.75? 4.2? Yeah.
4.75.
Mm, that's low. All right. So Byron, what are we doing next month?
Just another band from LA.
Just another band from LA. All right. Well, like I said, I want to hear from people in the comments. Am I full of crap? I could be full of crap. Please
Well, in
let me
general,
know.
you are, but maybe not here.
Yeah, this was rough. This is a rough one. Yeah, I'll
This
never.
was a lot. I spent a lot of time on this. Going back to watch the movie again, listening to the album at least twice,
Mhm.
taking notes. There's a lot of notes.
Was there anything that you covered that we should have covered that you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
Um, Not really. I mean, I covered quite a bit of it, I thought. Here's what I think.
Okay.
Go watch the movie, people, if you've never seen it and you like Frank, just to check it out. It's on Amazon if you have Prime. Um, hell, it might be on YouTube, but I don't think so. That documentary, The True Story of 200 Motels, is on YouTube, which explains a little bit about the making of the movie. And yeah,
Maybe I
that,
should have watched that.
yeah,
No.
it would answer some of your questions probably as to why they talk about, well, yeah, he recorded live on stage, not they didn't go back and re-record the orchestra. They couldn't afford to do it, so
Yeah. Well, the thing is that why didn't they record the orchestra in the first original session correctly?
I don't know. I don't think it sounds that bad though, but I don't
Oh,
pay that much. I don't pay that close of attention to it usually.
Yeah, I do. That drove me crazy. I didn't think that the band stuff sounded all that hot either. It just all sounded like demos to me. Please, in the comments, tell me what you think of it.
We'll let the viewers be the judge. They can
Yeah.
watch it
And
and see what they think.
please, the viewers normally would have, if we were doing this live, we'd ask the people to rate it as we're talking about it. But I'm asking everybody who's watching, please rate it below. Let us know what you think.
Okay.
So next month, we'll be doing Just Another Band from LA. I'm hoping that that will bear better, but I don't know.
Are you familiar with it?
I've never heard. I neglected this whole era because, like I said in the previous show,
I know.
all this stuff, when I read reviews about it, a lot of this stuff just got slammed and it got really bad reviews. So back when I was a kid, we're only in it for the money and absolutely free, got stellar reviews. This stuff virtually got panned. So I never ventured out to get it or listen to it.
I
So,
could probably sing along to that entire album, even every line of Billy the Mountain, probably. So, then burned into my brain.
okay, burned into your monkey brain.
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that wraps it up. We'll be back next month for just another band from LA. We'll give that one a shot, and I can hardly wait to get out of this period. I can tell you, it's been trying. Can hardly wait to listen to a record that's really good.
See how the next one goes.
Yeah, I might dig it though.
You might.
I might. You never know. I mean, Chunga's Revenge was okay, but it's still not upper echelon. You know, we're in a transitional period. And there's just way too much Flo and Eddie. I don't know. Sorry to say that. All right, everybody, we will see you. And what's next on the show? I have no idea, but please like, subscribe, and tell us what you feel about this record.
We got Crocus coming up.
We're going to be doing Crocus. Can you imagine we're going to do Crocus, for God's sakes? That's going to be fun. There, we're already there. Thumbs up, everybody. We're going to do Crocus. We're going to do 1978 in April. Rachel's Ghost will be back on the channel in April. There's just all kinds of stuff coming up. So stay tuned. Check out all the videos from the 80s cruise. A lot to watch there. Full of content here in the Warehouse. All right, everybody, we'll see you. And Byron, thanks for coming on. Always nice talking Zappa with you, whether I like the Zappa album or not.
It's all good.
It's all good. All right. See you, everybody. Thanks again.